Growing a community and building the community brings a lot of challenges to the world. And this will be the main topic of today's discussion, because we have here two founders of awesome communities and one leader of a great community. So we will be discussing a little bit of the challenges from setting up the community, growing and starting the movement. I will give a short introduction to all of our speakers, and I will give them 30 seconds to introduce themselves, because they usually know the best how to tell the most important part. So let me start with Klára. Can you just say hi to everyone and just shortly introduce you? 30 seconds. 30
seconds. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Klára. I'm the co-founder and COO of a community called Fempelet. So really happy to be here and get to meet you, everyone.
Hello everyone, my name is Ondřej. I'm leader of Čejka's community now for 2 years and something. Joined the community 3.5 years ago, and back to Pavlína.
Hi, I'm Pavlína, and almost 9 years ago I started Holíková marketingu.
That was super fast, and I think not even 30 seconds. So, even though I have some questions here in my smart device, the most important part of today's event is you, our community, and our viewers, joiners, and so on. So, let me put up back there a Slido, which we clean up from the questions from down. Now it's the time, if you have any questions for our three guests here today, to bring them up. I will try to include them into the discussion. This also includes everyone online. Feel free to ask whenever interests you. So, we did a short introduction, and as I mentioned, we have two founders and one leader. Like all of you are leaders at the moment, but let's start at the beginning. Like Klára, how to know that there is an interest in some specific community and it makes sense to start a movement?
So I was thinking about how we started Fempelet, and I think the first moment is that I was lacking something on the market, that I was missing a community of women. And if you're lacking something, there's a high chance there is someone else who lacks it too. But on the other hand, the question is how many such people are out there. So it's of course good to make some data-driven decision. So for us, it was first asking friends around, like, would you join this? Like, would you want to come to such events? And then the second step was a survey. So we collected answers if people would like to join a community of women, of professional women, and what would they expect from such a community. So that was the first thing, and of course another great idea is probably building just like a basic landing page where you collect addresses and see if people search for this type of service or community, and then decide if the number is good enough for you to give it a go.
How was the starting of marketing, Pavlína? Was that similar story or a little bit different?
I'm kind of nodding every time Klára says something, because I think it always comes from your personal story. You know, I have told this story a million times, but about 8 years ago, I went to a conference and they stopped me in my tracks and they said, the cloakroom for the waitresses is over there, you know, even though I was a speaker at that conference. And I realized that there are so many women who are facing this. And then I was looking at the data, exactly like Klára, you know, and checking in. And I realized that there are only 3% of creative directors of advertising agencies are women. Only 5% of startup founders are women. And that in Czech marketing conferences on stage, there are only 9% women, you know, even though there's so many women in my field. Over 60% of university graduates of marketing fields are women, and they are not represented. And you know, I always pilot. When I have this idea, I'm really fast in my thinking and in my speaking, obviously. And then I said, okay, let's organize lunch and let's see who comes, you know. And then I invited everybody for lunch, and exactly like Klára said, we had this deep discussion like, are you missing something? Are you feeling what I'm feeling? Are you looking for something? Would you join me in this? And then it actually started. So I think it's always kind of like piloting, getting feedback from the market, valuing it with data, and moving forward.
Right. All of your communities are solid movement these days. It's a strong foundations. Many people are following and joining. But when you look back at the beginning, what was the strongest differentiator from your communities to boost up that much, besides some other like side projects people usually having, but only having like a couple of people? Klára, where do you think the first like snowball effect starting to arising in FemBallet?
So I think 2 weeks after we started, after we had the landing page, we decided to organize a first meetup. And I think I ran there because I thought it's going to be like me and like 2-3 people. And 30 women showed up, and they were so excited, and they were from all over the world, living in Prague at that time. So I think that was the first moment when I was like, okay, so, you know, 30 is an amazing number. I'm really happy about that. And that's probably when the snowball even starts, because those people who join you and are very active and fans of the community, and it helped them, then they recommend it to someone else, and then 60 people show up, you know. And then last year we had a conference of 200 people after 2 years of COVID, you know, in October, when it was still sort of like, should we come, should we not? So I think it starts with the engaged first few members who become the cheerleaders, and they share the word. And of course, with the strong values, as was said before by Daniel, I think when you have the strong values, like for us, it's the diversity, inclusivity, support, then it automatically somehow attracts the right people.
Yeah, how did it start in Holíková marketing? When was the first like, wow, it's huge, wow, it's growing?
So for me, for a long time, you know, I had a different career, and I was really building that career, and I was kind of ignoring what was happening. Or like, you know, I was attending the events, or we were doing like meetups and so on. But for me, it was not kind of like something that would be the center point of my view. It was somehow happening. And at some point, you know, there were 3 moments that really like kind of like made me realize that there is something happening. First one was when I got a call from US Embassy, and they called me and they said, oh, I think you are one of the best European projects, and we want to send you to a scholarship to US. And I was suddenly like, oh, somebody's talking to me actually about this. And, you know, and they sent me to US to study communities. I was studying communities in New Orleans, and it was somehow like this external validation that it happened. Second moment for me was this, the fact that we are doing impact, that it's not only like women meeting, talking and saying like, I feel this, but that then it was the moment when somebody called me and said, we got a job because of you. I had the courage to go on stage. I really decided to quit my job because my boss is an asshole, you know. And that was like the moment when you realize you are actually not like doing some funny things and going for dinners, but you're doing like real impact. And this is for me like the crucial point. And the third one was when my co-founders joined me, and they decided to quit their jobs. And they said, we are going full-time with you. We want to really change this. We are making something. So those were like crucial moment. I really vibe with Klára, so I don't want to repeat what she's saying, so I'm trying to come up with more ideas, but definitely we vibe in the same things.
Absolutely what you said.
All right, Ondřej, your story is a little bit different. You, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you just took over the flag after Dita founded Čekitas, and now you should be the main motor and engine of the community. What's the biggest challenge of like doing this, not being the first like basic stone of the whole foundation process, but being the one taking over the flag after someone?
Thank you. So we all know the story of 2013 when Čekitas had first workshops and the idea came up, and then the snowball came to action when biggest partners, or like first one was Konica Minolta, then Microsoft, then Google joined and helped with the public awareness of the project, and everybody realized, yes, we really have a problem. We don't have so many women in ICT specialist roles, and we still have this problem now, 10% only. So for me, when I joined, when I started following Čekitas was 2016, when I was running a co-working center in Olomouc, or we started the community, also a different kind of community of freelance people. And we tried, you know, what can we teach these people so that there is more people independent from jobs and horrible bosses. And one of the projects that caught on my mind was Čekitas. We tried to bring it to Olomouc, and then we brought it to Olomouc, and For me, the story was, so, okay, I will have this side job, I will work my private free time dedicated to a community, build it here in Olomouc. And then I realized there is a huge potential for this community, and for me it made more sense to work on impact, as Klára and Pavlína are working, that they help women, sponsor them, help them to build their confidence, even though they haven't studied high school or university in the field, but they can become successful in IT. And the biggest challenge for our transition of roles from the founders, because I now work with the founders who are on the board and with the team, where the majority is women as well. So I have above me a level of women and governance, and below me also a team of heads who are women. For me, sometimes the biggest challenge is to like navigate the male and female energy in the team, because we have only 10% of men or 15% of men in the team. So we are like the opposite of the market that we are trying to bring diversity into. And another challenge, I think, is to keep the values going and the mission, and fulfill the missions with the stories and impact.
So what was the biggest surprise when you were growing the community? Not necessarily needs to be negative, it can be also positive. What was the biggest surprise for you when you saw how the community is growing around Čekytas?
So the biggest surprise for me was that there is a hunger for doing something meaningful. I had the same thing with other communities I worked for. I think that Klára and Pavlína will agree that the values, the mission is the basis, and then you want to do something meaningful besides your job that brings you money. Sometimes you can combine these two together. That's what I found. And I found that most of the people in the community and in the team, internal team, all of them have their heart, full heart is engaged in bringing this impact and changing the world around them. So that's the biggest surprise, that it really is driven by the love brand or love for the change that we bring.
What was the biggest challenge you faced in growing the Holíková marketing community?
So obviously the growth was the biggest challenge, and we were very lucky that we were growing organically so much. We were growing by 300-400% a year when it comes to everything, but that means you are growing, and suddenly it's changing, you know. And at the time when we started, I really knew everybody in the community. I would say, "Hi, Carolina, how are you? How are the kids?" You know, and everything. And then the next year, you're like, okay, you kind of know the people, and the next year, you're like, who are you? And the year after, you are like, I don't get the environment where you come from. I don't get you. You know, so for me, it was really like starting from building something for women you understand, who are like you, who vibe with you, to coming to this like mass market. We are currently over 30,000 women. So obviously not all those women work in marketing. Not all those women are women like me. And it was for me the biggest lesson about letting go of my own ego. And I will tell a story that really taught me a lesson about my own ego. A few years ago, I went to Třinec. You know, if you have never been to Třinec, don't go to Třinec. It's a very, very tough and dark place. And at that time, I had a mission that I would go and talk about female empowerment to every city and every village that they would invite me to. And they invited me from Třinec. I didn't know. I come from Prague. You know, if you're from Prague, you basically don't travel anywhere else. So I went to Třinec, and I had my usual talk about like how, you know, women should ask for more money, and you know how they should really empower themselves, and you know the story. And then one lady, she raised her hand, and she was like, you know, there's only one marketing job in the whole region. If I ever get an offer to get that job, I will not argue about my salary. And if the boss is starting to touch my ass, I have 3 kids to feed. Do you have any comments on that? And I was really quiet, and I realized I don't. that we don't actually have the power and the tools to help those women. And I went back to Prague and I called everybody and I said, we need to develop something. And that was the moment when we really started working with the regions. We introduced regional ambassadors, when we introduced programs for women who have to be with the kids in those poor regions, when we started giving out scholarships, and 50% of our courses are run on scholarships. And it was kind of like, you know, understanding that I can't develop products for me and my friends anymore, but that I have to really be human-centered, and humans mean everybody who is in the community. So I think like nowadays we have like so many segments that we design the products for.
Klára, what was the challenges in growth of female Fempalette?
No worries. So for us, there were a couple of milestones that, of course, as it was said today already, even though we only have 10:30 in the morning, the communities evolve. In our case, also the community gets older with us. So we, for example, now tackle different topics than we tackled before. Now it's more about leadership, more about parenthood, which definitely weren't our topics 4.5 years ago. So that's one thing. So it evolves. And also, Fempalette started as a community of women. We started doing events, connecting women online. But after the surveys that we mentioned, how to find the topic or how to find something that would really be valuable for the members, we asked what would help you the most in your career, and we found out that it's completely different for everyone. And that was the moment, a year after we started Fempalette, where we launched a mentoring program, which is now like the main thing we do. It helped us in many ways. It helped us to create a sustainable business model as well for us. And I think with that came like the bigger challenge, because when we started organizing the mentoring program, until about 500 people of mentees and mentors, we did everything in Google Sheet, of course, like including some automations like custom ones or Zapier. But at about the 500 people, it was already not sustainable. So I think I can chip in from the product side that we really at this moment had to create our own product. So we started developing a web app where we can match, take care and communicate with our mentors, mentees and coaches. And of course, at first it was like, well, let's do it. So like we created it with like the minimum features we needed at that moment. And we basically merged all the changes like couple times a day. So it was really fast, and it had so many bugs, but it really served the purpose we needed at that time, which was we needed to grow the product as fast as we grew the community. And now, like 3 years later, it's a product where we can plan. Like normally, you know, we have quarterly plan, we have sprints. So I feel like now more stable, we do it in a more professional way. We no longer launch a feature overnight or like from one day to another because it could influence other people. So I think like this phases of growth where you need to act differently than when it's now more stable and you can actually really test and make sure everything's working correctly.
That's great. Ondra wants to say something.
I think I might add up on all that has been said. I agree, and I can underline it twice. And maybe you will also have the same issues in your communities, that you have to manage expectations from the community, because they come and you have maybe a big, great vision, great values, and the problem has one great wide definition, and then there's so many small pieces that you should address, but you cannot sustainably and efficiently address all. So you have many target groups you can maybe serve with your community, and from the community also come, we can do this, we can do that. There come voices from the more active people, and you need to develop a way of either give them space to do it and support it efficiently and sustainably as well, and grow it then, or to navigate it really that, you know, we are now focusing on this area because this will bring that impact, and then it's about communication. The biggest challenge we had with Čejka was that we were sustainably growing locally going locally and spreading around in person and to-person education and events. And then COVID came, which maybe was the same experience for you all. So we had to switch and change the modus operandi in 2 weeks into online, so we could continue and keep the flow of energy from the community going, even though it was now, maybe all of you have experienced that the sorry, I lost the word, but the you don't get so much satisfaction from online. So people who are now we can see here, yes, we get the energy back from you. But if you speak online to all the black screens, black faces, that was one of the biggest challenges we had to overcome, and we are now still facing it.
I would stick with you. When the community grows and you like forecast these challenges and you move this, you usually need to put more people into the, let's say, community leadership team, and for those who take care about that. What's the biggest challenge in like taking members of the community and making them leaders, making them responsible for the community and making them more part of the organizing team, and eventually maybe starting paying them and make them employees of that community? What's the biggest challenge there?
So for us, the biggest challenge for us is that the community, which is now, or which is for the 8 years this past, around 1,400 people of professionals from IT companies, IT jobs usually. So they are not so often those who become the members of our community or our community leaders or team internally. Sometimes it's our alumni, so the people who we educate then come and become our team members. The challenge is because we could not ever pay or maybe potentially in the future if we get enough funding, but to pay someone 100K to become a community leader, because that's their salary now and the standard of living they have, that's one of the biggest challenges. But we are giving them space to become leaders in the topics, for example. So we have testing, and we have great team from Ostrava, where one of our community team members, who was originally coach, lecturer, now becomes also the guarantee for the quality of the product. So that's how we encourage them and pull them up on the ladder and give them more governance over the quality and the topic that they can then take care of and encourage more people, colleagues, and be more visible in the community themselves.
Pavlína, how does it look like in your community? The people who are responsible now for managing it and leading it, are those actually ex-members of the community, or similar to Ondra, external people just joining and helping?
Hello. Yeah. It has definitely become our best practice is to hire straight from the community, because those people know you. They have been with us usually like for so long. They have been part of the Facebook group. They have gone through our academies. They have learned how we operate. And there's basically, that was like such a long onboarding that we don't need to do onboarding anymore, you know? So, and you kind of like test it's a trial phase, you know? It's kind of like very long. And we saw, for example, during the academy, how active they are within the community, how they are assigning their homework or so on. And then you kind of like, you know what you're reaching for. And they are especially aligned with the mission. You don't need to explain the mission. And for me, I'm never hiring people for CVs. I'm hiring them for the mission, for the alignment with the mission. Because you can always teach people how to do Google Analytics. You can never teach them how to do the mission, how to believe in the same thing you do. And if we are on the same page, then we can move faster, we can iterate, we can really go after what we need. So we are definitely hiring from the community.
Klára, even FemPalette team is strong, if I'm correct, right? And what was the biggest lesson learned during like building the team which managed the community? What's the most important fact when you're searching for someone to join the community management team?
I think one thing I need to say is that it's much easier to manage full-time team members than it's to manage volunteers. I don't think I really mastered managing volunteers, so definitely the biggest improvement came when we were able to pay for full-time team members, and we have people who have the full focus to help us on this mission. The challenge, of course, it's sometimes hard to give up your responsibilities, especially when you're used for a few years to do everything only with your co-founder. So, for example, I did all the mentor calls, on the mentee calls, matching, support during the program. And then we finally had our first program managers, and then actually it was much easier for me to hand over this responsibility because I knew what are the challenges of this process, and I understood them when they were coming to me with maybe like an issue or a problem. So I think it's really good to like do everything before you hand it over to someone. Of course, at some stage it's no longer possible, but in our size, we now have 11, we're 11, including me and Lucy. We're 11 people on the team, so it's still possible to try everything and help them along the way. You asked about a challenge. I think I would mention probably the hiring as the biggest challenge. So we have it half-half. So we have half external people that found us on job portals and half members or alumni of our programs. In, of course, the other case, of the external case, it's much more important to make sure they have the right values. So we ask them a lot about this on the interviews, like, what does a community mean to you? What does, like, how important is the even women empowerment to you? So we want to make sure that we are aligned on that. With the community members, it's much more easier because you already know that they should be a good fit. They know you. You already, on the other hand, know that they are motivated, eager to grow, and enjoy being in an international, diverse environment. So I think, 3 to 4 rounds of interviews, and it's still not enough because you get to spend just a few hours with that person, and you're deciding that you will work with them every day for, when you're lucky, for a couple of years. So really kudos to all the recruiters, and if you have any tips how to really uncover quickly the potential, then any tips are welcome. But I think so far we're lucky to have found the right people for the team. But it's always such a stress, like talking to 10 people and deciding for just one, for example.
So if I get it right, it's like easier to have full-time people than just managing volunteers, of course. But then finding the right full-time people, it's also hard because it's a little bit harder than the typical company, because here it's super important to have aligned mission and vision, because that's basically the foundation of the community, right?
Yeah, I think in companies it's important too.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, especially in such a small team, you really need to have like a strong base of this team that really works towards the vision.
Let's get to the challenging part of managing volunteers. Do you guys using volunteers? I believe all of you are. What's your tips how to use them the best way, how to make them feel not like use them in the way like you give us something for free, we give you nothing, but to have how to give them value back. And I would actually start with Ondra, because I believe that was the foundation of the community at the beginning, right? Majority of the people doing the volunteering work. I believe it's even these days, right?
Yes, that's true. It's still the foundation of our work. The majority of our staff on courses is voluntary. Some of them take the small, we have like a small remuneration or compensation for their time, for their efforts, but it's really symbolic. And many of them give it up towards our further development of activities, or to even more endangered or women who have lower income, or are single mothers, or now we have a project for women who fled from Ukraine, from the war, who can now also teach or learn with us, so we can teach them IT skills. So the recommendations you asked for. We have also onboarding, so you should, or the process of accepting volunteers into the community should be done with the utmost care, so that you see really that the people are aligned, as Pavlína said and Klára said, with your vision, with your values, and that everything will be correct. My biggest worry which I shared even with our team, is that we will have some kind of scandal of a person who is really just misusing our community and access to women who are vulnerable and who want to experience the safe space and learn with us in a really safe environment. That someone will misuse this trust that we give to the people who enter the community, and then it will really damage the trust into what we do. And that, I think, maybe the same thing for the communities of Klára and Pavlína. So the recommendation is do your background check for the people that you allow to go to the community, which for us works that people who join, or the new people, are validated and usually invited by those who already are in the community. And that should be the process. And if someone applies, we ask, do you know this guy? Do you know this lady who wants to join us? If it's our alumni who wants to join, that's the best practice, because we already know her, she knows us, she knows how the courses go. If it's a new guy from a new company, we always ask if someone knows him, and then he only can enter in a limited role before we let him become a lecturer or give him access to more information or data on the participants or whatever. So that's, yeah, be precautious and safe.
I can add, because I was thinking before I joined this panel discussion, what were my biggest fuck-ups building the community? And honestly, it was trying to set up the volunteer work in the right way. Because, you know, if you fuck up something about finance, or if you fuck up something about the deadline, it's like you're not fucking up with people. This is like making an impact. And for example, for me, one of the biggest lessons was, you know, when I think we were like 7,000 members when I realized I can't do this alone. So I went into the Facebook group, I set up a post without thinking much. I was like, hi, I can't do it alone. Does anybody want to join me? Imagine posting that into a 7,000 Facebook group. Yes, people wanted to join me. And they sent me messages, and I was like so overwhelmed with all those messages that were incoming that I was like, yeah, sure, this is your responsibility now. And that's it. I was just like giving up things because I was so overwhelmed. I really needed somebody to take over our events. I needed somebody to take over the administration of the group and so on. So without actually having the calls with the people, without having the background checks, without doing any stalking, you know, like kind of without anything, I just like was saying, yeah, you are now our community manager. Thank you, goodbye. Let me know if you have any problems. And without any setting up like with the KPIs or check-ins or one-on-ones, like anything. Magically, it worked. This is how I found Aneta, my co-founder, you know, this is how I made. But it could have gone so wrong, and it couldn't have worked the long term, because, you know, you are running on excitement, but the excitement doesn't last long. It's like if you have a new relationship, you're in love for 6 months, 2 years if you're lucky, but then suddenly, you know, you're starting to ask for that ring, and those people were starting to ask for that ring, and I was like, I didn't have any processes set up for that. So I had to make a really strong decision at that point, like terminate a lot of volunteers, say, you know, this is now the agreement, this is how we will work, take it or not. But it was really a difficult decision, because for so long we were running on this like hormones, and then suddenly I said, we need an agreement, you know. And now we try to work more with this like clarity, transparency, agreements, check-ins, being in touch, you know, really knowing you, and so on and so on. But this was really like something I did out of pure love, let's say.
Yeah, I might just quickly add that you basically are not working with employees, it's volunteers. So as Pavlína said, there is a time and limit of the hormones and the energy that they will be willing to give. Sometimes there is a time limit of a year, half year, 2 years. Sometimes they take a pause and they come back. Clearly, as Pavlína now said, you set the boundaries, but you also need a big field, big playground where they can take action on their own, or have their ideas can play around, so that they can stay engaged and even find themselves the energy back. And regular checkups, regular communications. We do beers, we do community meetups, so that you can find the way you want to interact and to get the energy back that you give as a volunteer. I also volunteer, and many of us volunteer ourselves, even though we work for a volunteering community or a company. We do other stuff because we also need to give the energy somewhere else from the work part and then get it back. So I think maybe other community leaders will share their best practices later on.
I just want to add one thing, because Ondra pointed something that we all are volunteering in other communities. And that's one thing I realized when we were looking for regional ambassadors. All those people who joined us as ambassadors, they were already volunteering in 3 other communities. So probably, like, all people from your communities are in our communities, and we are volunteering like back and forth and creating all the karma. You know, it's the like Paretovo pravidlo, like that 20% of this like Czech Republic creates the 80% of the volunteers from my perspective. But this is like, for me, it was such a good insight to understand that there are people who are like excited to be active in their communities, and they would be active in various communities. It's not just me, like girls who just joined Fempalet or Holky z marketingu. I think we overlap in so many women, and that is totally great. We overlap with Ondra in so many women, and that is totally great. And I feel like, you know, what Klára provides them is a different story than we provide them, what Ondra provides them. And it's that I don't consider us competitors, even though some people would like to try to point this, but that's not true. I think we are all corroborating towards the same point, and I think it's quite clear from what we're all saying.
Absolutely, and I'll also add one more thing to this discussion that maybe went sideways, is that it's not only that they are part of our all communities. For example, in our case, I think that's very much possible, but it's also that they might join you because they have a specific need at that time, but then maybe they fill the need that they had at that moment when they joined, for example, Fempalet, and they, for example, decided to change their career to marketing, and they joined Holky z marketingu, and maybe like they got more to like the analytics type of work, and they decided to go into IT, and they joined the Čekitas courses. So it's completely fine that they grow, they move, they maybe leave your community because they probably moved in a different direction, or I don't want to say outgrew you, but like grew differently. And it's definitely fine. That's also maybe one thing that surprised me, like not to so much hang on like someone like not leaving the community, because it's completely fine that they move on maybe with their life or their career.
Thank you very much for your reactions. I usually like the panels where me as the host is completely useless. So, so thanks a lot. Let's get to the questions from our audience. Let's keep it a little bit more to the topic of paying people or like appreciating them. When you all said that you have full-time people, can you like reward them as some traditional companies? Can you give them competitive salary or some other perks which they can't get enough? Like, I think the answer is obvious. Like, those people can get at least the part of the belonging and getting the fulfillment of the community, which is the majority value. And I think doing the right work is the #1 motivation a lot of people would like to have. But beside that, and get back more to the materialistic part of the things, which happens to make our life easier. How you guys manage that?
I can start. I completely hate the notion that you have to decide between salary or doing good. And it has been a long-term running thing in this society. And you know, me and Dan, we were not so long time ago at a meetup of NGOs, and everybody was telling us, but we are so poor and we can't pay our people and so on. I think, you know, for me, the dream is that you shouldn't make a decision between money and impact. And this is why I'm trying to pay my people as much as I can. I really like to strive for that. And I know honestly, I know they would work for less, because we are doing good things, and they can probably like kind of explain it to themselves. But I really try to do that. And the same with our, for example, trainers. We try to pay them same as I get paid as a Google mentor. Like, I try to really level that space. Yes, it's not like we can't match L'Oreal, we can't match Product Board, we can't match that, of course not. But we really strive to be better in this, and that is totally my dream. And it's a shame that so many grants, for example, don't allow you to put salaries of your people into the grant, just kind of like the scholarships or something like this.
Yeah, maybe I'll just continue that I also don't think it's okay to underpay people just because it's a good cause. Well, where's the struggle, I think, is IT, where I don't think we would be able to keep the person who's doing IT for us, like if they weren't so passionate about the mission, because as you said, some of the big companies, they would offer them probably a better offer. But that said, I think also with our growth, we're trying to do the same, provide as much as we can for the to the team members, and also on the other hand, maybe unlike Čekitas in some points, like as the Čekitas NGO, we are registered as a business and we are a social impact business, so we're trying to have a sustainable business model, make money and put the money to the team. So I think that's also making it a little bit easier for us, so we don't need to like run for the grants and argue why the team wages are not part of the fund.
I can follow up on that, because the second question which we have here is how to make community sustainable.
So the probably short question is, I don't know how to repeat the process. But for us, we were lucky enough to have found in the community the need for personalized, inclusive approach to career development, and we decided for it to be the mentoring, which we monetize. And for the self-payers, we try to keep the price very affordable, so it's a half-year program, and we try to make sure that all the women can join. We also have a scholarship fund that is funded from our cooperation with companies. So I think in our case, we were lucky to come up with a service that we can provide to the individuals, to the companies, to help not only women, but also the teams and companies grow, and that's how we are able to sustain also the social impact activities that we do, including all our events, all our content, educational content, ebooks, the mentoring program for scholars and stuff like that. So I don't know for how many of you that would be, of course, applicable, but that's how we did it.
I think I can definitely build on what Klára said, because it would be very similar. For me, the core is diversifying the product. So we are actually able to react to whatever happens on the market. So we have different types of academies, different types of ebook and mentoring programs, and so on. Like, so everybody can find a space, and that we are part of your customer journey the whole time. So that's like one thing. That means we are standing on different revenue streams. So for me, I don't understand why so many NGOs are only like depending on grants. I would never do it to myself. I wouldn't sleep, and I love my sleep. So I want to, you know, we are 90% bootstrapped, and that is where I want to keep this, because I don't want to endanger the company just by not getting a grant because the political leadership has changed. So we definitely look at different revenue streams, like coming from companies, coming from individuals, coming from whatever things, and we are constantly monitoring the market and adjusting the product and the revenue stream connected to that, to how the market is changing and evolving. So for example, COVID was a big thing, and suddenly we were able to introduce webinars, and we were able to introduce, I don't know, live streams and so on and so on.
Yeah, I can underline that, and I can just add that in the NGO sector, for sustainability, you have to be more flexible and more open to change. As for what I say, change is the only constant, and that's if the markets change, so one of your revenue streams drops out, you need to change the way how you operate, maybe even change the team, change the structure. So yeah, not to be afraid to make decisions, make them quickly as possible, build on data, and for us as well as for Holíková Marketingu and FunPalette, it's on building different revenue streams, not to be reliant on one of the partners or one source of financing, more than 25% or 30% is the best.
Thank you very much for your answers. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so let me close this one with a question which I personally like the most. What's your biggest dream? Where do you see your communities in 5 or even 10 years? Where do you think this can boom? And just keep it up to 30 seconds for each, and let's close it up so we can get moving.
I will start with the most radical answer, probably. I don't want my community to exist in 5 to 10 years because I don't want the need for us to exist. I don't want the need to say to people, you should have women in your companies, you should have women on stage, you should feel like empowered and you should feel that. No, I don't want to exist. That's what I want. I want to do the other things in my life.
So, I would say this was a pretty harsh answer. Do you guys can agree on, or do you have some other vision?
Okay. I totally agree. I have the same mindset that eventually the community should not exist for this cause. Maybe there will be a different cause, there will be a different community, but it shouldn't be a taboo or a topic that women should have the same chance to become financially independent, have the same chance of education or in any field of science, any field of what they want to do, any kind of career they want to pursue. That's what we have in common, I think.
Absolutely agree. I love that. And I would probably just add that, as you said, it's not about not existing. Maybe we can reframe, we can evolve, as all communities do. So, for example, what I imagine for Fempele, that we would be a global community, especially of women that have this growth mindset, that want to develop themselves in their career and keep learning and keep growing. I think that would be wonderful. And yeah, that's my dream.
Dreams. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your great answers. For those of you who still have great questions in Slido, which we unfortunately could not get answered, feel free to connect on LinkedIn with our awesome speakers or get in touch with them during today's, and I believe they will be more than happy to answer to you. And I hope we will get to those questions in some other panels or presentations during today's talk. Thanks